Man, DIY, the storytelling has really been amazing tonight. Before I start, I just wanted to say that I am totally impressed with how everyone has done it themselves up here. It's been really, really impressive. It's a lot of pressure, but no stakes. The stakes are low. My dad is a big DIY person. He has always done a lot of things for himself. Like he builds his own sunroom for his house. He figures out how to run his own electric. He makes his own keys, which is weird because it's not that expensive, but he knows how to do it. And they look like caveman keys a little bit, but they work. I'm not sure that that's really the right way to do things. But he also is very much a do-it-yourself person when it comes to his own internal life, I think. And he's always sort of been that way. He sort of looks at life, I think, as just a series of individual DIY challenges, like marriage is a DIY challenge to figure out how to make your way through the difficulty of connecting with another person. Raising kids is a DIY challenge, even though you have 3 kids and it's supposed to be interactive. Having friends is supposed to be a DIY challenge, but it's just not something that he knows how to do because he needs to figure out how to accomplish that. And part of it is just because he had a really rough life growing up, and he's dyslexic, and his mom was pretty crappy, and he worked in the post office for 20 years at night. That's not going to help anything. It's really the hardest part about it, I think, was for us. He was so controlling as kids. And so much about trying to maintain his own little inner world that it became a really difficult thing to deal with as a kid. He had a lot of crazy rules, and if you didn't follow these crazy rules, some bad shit was going to happen. You couldn't watch HBO because there might be boobs on HBO. And so if you're 11 and you're watching this, I think it was Ralph Macchio in this movie where he plays this Native American guy who goes to college and he's on the track team, but there's racial tension. And there's no boobs in that movie. It was 5 o'clock, but he came home from work and he realized someone was watching HBO. It was Robbie Benson, actually, not Ralph Macchio, just to be fair. And he would throw you down a flight of stairs because you were watching HBO. So this guy, he was a tough dude to deal with for sure. I spent a lot of my life trying to not be that sort of way. I was convinced that this was not the kind of person I was going to be. And as we sort of grew older, my dad he eventually retired from the post office, which is going to help. And then he moved to Florida, and he had sort of this Crosby, Stills and Nash sort of come to Jesus sort of transformation, which I actually think is kind of cool that anyone can do that. But he sort of began to realize that he had spent so much of his life really struggling with this DIY mentality of trying to overcome everything. And so now he sort of turned into this guy who was a New Yorker who eventually moved down to Florida and now had sort of tried to embrace the easy life. But he never really had the tool set to do it. He figured out this is the way he was living was not the way he should be living, but when you spend your whole life honing this hammer as the only tool that you've got, right? You're not going to be able to use it for other things. All you have is a hammer, and you haven't ever worked any of the other tool sets, but he knows that he should. So what happens is he comes to visit me now, and he's basically, I can see myself in him. I can see someone that struggles with trying to not be the person who's overly controlling of things, who's able to accept help from others, is able to connect with others, but he doesn't quite know how to do it. And so it's sort of like seeing this older version of myself. So he'll come to visit, and he'll just be I'm trying to do the older version of me. Sort of like this. Like, oh, you know, Debbie, it's really important to just, you have to sort of let life come to you, and you don't have to worry about things so much, and you just have to really accept love. You know what I mean? Really accept humanity and love that's all around us. I love you so much. Now you say it to me. And I'm just like, the one thing I can't stand about being around him is how much I see myself in this guy, and I'm like, oh, I just don't want to. It's so hard to reconcile these things in my head because I'm the worst person to help in the world. But I am someone who tries to be really generous, but I just do it in a way to keep people distanced from myself. It's a really strange sort of thing. But I figured like what I would try with my dad, since when he comes to visit I can't stand looking at him because it is just like looking at me. I mean, and I'm not far from this, to be honest. This isn't really hard to do. But I figured, all right, so if I have to spend time with him and I don't want him to just keep saying that he loves me and I have to say I love him back, I was like, well, let me find some activities. And the first activity that I found was, I think was a really big breakthrough, was I decided I was going to get high with my dad. And I had this really good weed from a friend of mine who used to be an assistant for Dennis Leary. And so he would get this really good weed. And I was like, this is going to be the great equalizer for me and this guy, so I don't have to really deal with him too much, which really means I don't have to deal with myself. And so he's visiting me, we both smoke a little bit of weed, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make this turkey burger before things get really heavy for me. Do you want anything? And he's like, no, I'm good, I'm just sitting here loving you. So good. So I go and make the turkey burger. It seems like it takes 2 hours because it was really good weed. And I look back at my dad and I'm like, are you sure you don't want anything? And he's like, oh, I love you so much. You're sad. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go back and finish this. And then I finished the turkey burger finally, put it on its bun, and I cannot wait to eat this thing. And I look around, and my dad is not on the couch. And I thought he was on the couch, and I was like, well, that's kind of weird. And I look to my left, and he's not to my left. And I'm like, what? And I call out, Dad! Dad! And I don't hear anything from him. And then I look down, and Dad has taken it upon himself, as a personal challenge, presumably, to try and get some cereal, because he got really hungry because he got the munchies. And he's on the floor, let me see if I can do this, he's on the floor, like on all fours, just shaking uncontrollably with laughter in a pool of milk, because he got some from the fridge, and there's just Cocoa Puffs all over the floor. And I'm like, are you okay, Dad? He looks up and he's just like, he can't even say anything. It's like that kind of laughter. And I was looking at him and I was thinking, like, you know, if I do end up being my dad, and I do constantly struggle with this DIY of life, being face down in a puddle of Cocoa Puffs and milk with someone that you actually do really love is maybe not such a bad way to go. Thank you very much.